Hello, welcome to Cracking the Cryptic and the Friday Crossword Masterclass. So it's me, Mark, again today. Both Simon and I having some difficulties, but we are very, very keen to bring it to you always. So here I am in a hotel room, and I'm going to attempt today's crossword puzzle. Now, I have been very excited to learn that it's by Paul Bringloe, who I last met 20 years ago, I reckon. I met him a couple of times. At the time, Paul was starting out as a crossword compiler. I think he'd done a few in The Guardian, known as Neo or Tease, perhaps, as a couple of his pseudonyms. And Paul, I think, was a session drummer at that time, might still be. Or a drummer, probably, is more polite. And what a fascinating profession that is. He told me stories about some of the bands he'd played for, including The Cause, as far as I remember. And I think he liked to be regarded as a troublemaker. Now, that may have changed in 20 years. Maybe we will see today. But I'm delighted to make renewed acquaintance with Paul in today's puzzle. I'm looking forward to giving it a go. I have got a couple of shout outs. So, first of all, Holly Reid was very keen that we mention her dad's stew. Holly's in Wales. She's originally a Kiwi, and her dad has been visiting from New Zealand. And although he's going back at the moment, she'd love us to acknowledge cryptics and his interest in them, which has been long term. Hers is more recent because of our videos, I think. So it's brilliant that they can now bond together over a times Cryptic masterclass from Cracking the Cryptic. That's exactly the sort of family togetherness we want to foster. And Harry Johnston just wrote to us to show us his first completed cryptic. He's learnt the techniques from this masterclass, and now he's completed his first puzzle on his own. He's understandably proud. Well done, Harry. Many more to you in the future. And finally, and very importantly, I want to mention Joe Tinsley. Now, you might remember that name. He wrote to us a while ago. He included a crossword, and I think we provided a link to it, which announced originally to his parents, but then, of course, to you if you solved it, that he and his wife were expecting a baby. And the great news is that the baby is with us. And if I have worked the magic of this correctly, you can see Joe and the baby. Now, he's written a clue to tell his father what the baby's name is. 7 letters, boy who follows Alpha, bravo. And his dad wrote a clue back showing that he'd understood what the name was, cleaning lady with pork pie for boy, 7 letters. So well done if you can understand those clues. And I will reveal that that was a picture of Joe with his son Charlie. Fantastic. Congratulations to Joe, especially to his wife. Joe says that our crosswords and videos got him through the long labour and helped his wife too. I wonder how true that is. But anyway, he's looking forward to the day when he can introduce his son to the masterclasses. And I hope they're still going when that day comes. I'm not sure at all. But anyway, fantastic news. Congratulations, Joe and your wife and little Charlie. Fantastic. Now, let's have a look at today's puzzle, and I will try and talk you through how to solve it, always assuming that I can do so. So here we go. Just want to... losing my mind now. Just want to check that you can see that and me. There we go. Right. 1 across. Flying V, possibly available at last in Peel. Right. I don't quite know what the surface of that is meant to imply, to be honest, but what I'm immediately thinking about is a V formation of things flying, and that's making me think of geese. Now, geese is 5 letters and would fit, but possibly might be connected with the definition. Available at last looks like it might be the letter E. And then if we put that in Peel, well, geese doesn't really work anymore. Now, it may help to know what the collective name for a group of geese is. It may help to know that there are two, and one is for geese on the ground, which is a gaggle, and the other is incredibly for geese in the air, which is a skein. And if you do know that word, then you will be able to see that around the E we have skin, and to skin something is to peel it, or the peel could be the skin of the banana, for instance. So that is the answer. And quite a strange bit of general knowledge to start the puzzle, I think, there. Right, one down. One assisted by elves. Old creatrix protects. A creatrix. I wouldn't claim I knew that was definitely a word, but it must be the feminine of creator. I don't know what the answer here is, by the way. One assisted by elves looks like it could be the definition. Oh, I suppose Santa is presumably assisted by elves and begins with S. What can we do with that? Old creatrix protects. I don't know. It looks a bit like a hidden, but sold Crete isn't a word. One assisted by elves. Old creatrix protects. Well done if you've got that. I'm moving on to two down. Begins with an E. Antelope. Well, 5 letters beginning with an E. A lot of crossworders will immediately say, is this eland, when they see antelope? And let's see. Any number in valley standing up. Right, any number can be the letter N in algebra. And if you stand up a word for valley, that could be dale, and there we get our eland, a classic antelope appearing in crosswords since about 1930. Now, 3 down. Trouble with a monkey in city. It's a very elegantly worded clue. And I was saying that Paul liked to be a troublemaker, and here we are, trouble with a monkey in city. Now, the city could be New York, NY. Can we put A and a word for monkey into NY and get trouble? Not sure. That would need a 5-letter word for a monkey. I can't Nachimpi doesn't really work, does it? So what else could we do with this clue? Trouble with a monkey in city. A monkey can be a certain amount of money. We had ponies last week. A monkey can be £500. That would be LD. No, I don't know what's going on here. We might be looking for an 8-letter city beginning with N, and I can't think of what that is. So I'm going to try the acrosses. We've got given letters now at 9 across and 11 across. Let's try the 9-letter one at 9. Protestant, to rove freely in Muslim state. Well, I would have been looking at anagramming to rove if it's to be considered freely, but that's not going to fit into a Muslim state and allow a word to exist with that A where it is. So I don't think that's it. Protestant looks like a definition to me. So there are various, of course, sects of Protestantism. That's a difficult word to say. Like Baptists and Anabaptists and Presbyterians and the like, Huguenots. I can't think of anything that works very well there. To rove freely could be to roam. Muslim state could be Oman, but that doesn't really inspire anything. No, I'm struggling a bit today. Let's try 11 across. Restrained in 2 ways. Now, are those 2 literal ways? 2 words meaning way, one of which might be an abbreviation for a road or a street? Or is it a palindrome that can be read both ways? I think it is 2 different ways. One of them is a mode, which is a way of doing something, and the other is a street, abbreviated to ST. And mode plus ST gives us modest, which does mean restrained. Okay, well, the only extra letters that's given us throw us back at 1 down and 3 down. I'm going to have a quick look at those. So it doesn't look like Santa anymore. One assisted by elves. Old creatrix protects. Gaia, would that be a creatrix? Now there's this famous nursery story about a shoemaker who gets assisted by elves, and they come in every night and make the shoes, and then something happens in the story and to stop that. So could this be shoemaker, which would fit at one down? Creatrix could be, a she-maker, a female creator, and old is being protected. The letter O is being protected by she-maker to give us shoemaker. Well, that's very cleverly put together. Goodness me. Now, that does make Oman look like the Muslim state here. Well, that's interesting. A Protestant beginning OMA. Am I being very ignorant there? I really don't know. Protestant can't really be a protester. That would have to be expressed as that, one protesting or a protester. So it kind of has to be a religious word. I don't think I know the one that we need here. Oh, Orange Man. Right. That is somebody who is in Northern Ireland, goes on marches with the Orange Lodge and is loyal to William IV and so on. I believe those marches are due to be disrupting the open golf start times in Northern Ireland today. I wonder if that will occur. Anyway, Orange Man would fit. So I think that's right. It's got Oman around it, and that leaves range to be to rove freely. Well done if you spotted that, Protestant, before I did. Okay, that gives us lots of letters, lots of very surprising letters for 3 down. Nagasaki is a city. I didn't know we were looking at Tokyo. Nag is trouble. To trouble someone is to nag them. And a Saki. I think there is a monkey called a Saki. I'm more familiar with Saki as H.H. Munro, writer of short stories. And I think there's a monkey that's an SAI as well. I mean, it's always helpful to know these short synonyms for crosswords. I couldn't tell you what sort of a monkey a Saki is, but I do think I've come across it. And I think we get Nagasaki there, which is clearly a Japanese city. Right, 4 down. Million in shillings is mine, ? Right, shillings. Shillings can be abbreviated to the letter S. Million can be abbreviated to the letter M. And I think that's the relevant one this time. So if we put million in a short word for shillings, 2 bob would have been 2 shillings. So bob can mean shillings. Then we get bomb, and that can mean a mine in the sense of a lot of money. We made an absolute bomb. We made a mine out of this. The mine is, I would say, a less common slang term for a lot of money, but it certainly can be. This project was a gold mine. That's not unimaginable. Okay, 4 across. How we see strike involving one swaggering. How we see, I'm thinking by something, by eyes, or... but then one swaggering, with that B, is that a blusterer? That would be 9. Braggadocio. How we see strike involving one. I don't think blusterer is really working there. I'm not getting any of that from what would be the wordplay components. Bravado. Lots of swaggering words begin with B. Boast. Bravura. Bold. Bluster. I don't know. I don't know where we're going. Let's have a look at 14 across, which looks like it might begin with knock. Reportedly cooler. Gift is 27. Well, reportedly can be a homophone indicator, something that sounds like something else. A cooler can be a prison. So maybe Nick, knack. Right, that is going to be the answer because it's a beautiful phrase that fits this enumeration and the 2 Ks we have in the grid. So it's knick-knack, and a knack is a gift of being able to do something. 27 is going to refer, I presume, to 27 across, which is going to have an answer that could define knick-knack. Well, a knick-knack is a sort of decorative object that you might have in your house. Shall we look at 27? Might as well. Trifle dish cracked by temperature on stove. A trifle could mean anything quite small. A dish, temperature is almost always the letter T. Cracked by temperature on stove. So with a T in this and a 9-letter word, and we know it can mean knick-knack, and therefore a small thing like a trifle, I thought of the word bagatelle. Would that work? It would, because one type of stove is as I would call it, an aga, or as my wife would call it, an aga. And aga and T would be temperature on stove. That is cracking or going into the middle of bell. Why is a bell a dish? Because a beautiful girl could be a dish, or she could be a belle of the ball. And therefore that is bagatelle. This is a cleverly put together puzzle, we can tell that already. Right, we've now got 13 down, which has a B in the anti-penultimate position, and that immediately makes me think of words ending in able or ibble, and an N second. Unerring in 2 lines, 1 moral tale includes. So, unerring. Don't they call the Pope unable to make a mistake? They call him infallible. That would fit. 2 lines would be LL. 2 lines, 1 would be LLI. So, the first in the clue, unerring in, we have to actually just translate that to in the answer. And then we put LLI into fable, which is a moral tale. And we get this word meaning unerring, infallible. It's one of those words that if you're not very familiar with it, you would wonder whether it ends in able. The wordplay here does tell you that it doesn't, but because that syllable is always pronounced with a kind of unpronounced, with a schwa, which is a kind of, I don't know how to describe the vowel sound that it makes, but it's not clear what it is, basically, if I pronounce infallible. Anyway, 19 across. Position and power lost to plebeian. Power can be just the letter P. Position can be rank. If there was a word for a plebeian, which is a kind of lower class member of society, that was prank, that would make absolute sense. No, there isn't. But what there is the word prole. Right, another word from Latin for a lower class member, or a member of the lowest class, or in fact for the whole lowest class, is proletariat. And a member of that is a proletarian or a prole, P-R-O-L-E. So that is what we're looking at here. That has lost its P for power. And that leaves us with role, which is a position. So there we go. Rank fooled me for a bit there. Let's try 15 down. We might try the southwest corner now. Looks like it begins with ill. Such gains not legit, criminally trousering 50. That's very cleverly worded. It is ill-gotten, I think, because we're anagramming not legit. We're treating that criminally. It's been written in entirely the wrong way, i.e. not in the order that was given. It's trousering, i.e. containing a letter for 50, and in Roman numerals 50 can be L. So this is how ill-gotten is made up, an anagram of not legit with L secreted in it, trousered, and we get ill-gotten. And such gains are, of course, not legit. They are ill-gotten, although I guess you would say the definition is just such gains, because you can describe gains as ill-gotten. Right, 22 across. American party fit to receive Republican darling. American can be US. It can be just the letter A in crosswords. Party, well, I mean, American Party could be Republicans or Democrats, but Republican gets mentioned later in the clue, so it's a bit unlikely. But a party can be a do. So if we started with a do, which is suggested by the O we have written here, what can we make from that? Well, we could make adorable. And that would mean darling in a sense, as in a darling. Well, I mean, you could describe anything as darling. This was a darling piece of work, and that would mean adorable. So then we have to have fit and Republican given by the R and able bit, and that works fine. A, do, able receives the letter R, which is the abbreviation, or one of the two abbreviations for Republican. Okay, let's move on to 22 down, 5 letters beginning with A. Room at the top, simple and elegant. I think that room at the top has probably been used in a few hundred crossword clues, and very rarely has it been the play written by John Osborne. It's certainly from the Angry Young Men era of British drama, because its title obviously seems to mean the room at the top of the house. That's what it seems to always mean in a crossword clue. And I think here, therefore, we're looking at attic. It fits. It's 5 letters beginning with A. Why is that simple and elegant? I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. But there is an Attic order of Greek architecture, and quite possibly its main defining feature is being simple and elegant. It's based on, I mean, it means coming from Athens, whose area was called Attica in the old days. So I'm definitely going with Attic, simply based on room at the top and the fact that we had 5 letters beginning with A. Classical scholars and architecture students will know better than me why simple and elegant defines Attic. Okay, 26 across. Trilby's first in hat box for this. I think Trilby was a fictional character after whom the hat became named. But Trilby's first could be the letter T. If we put that in a hat, 4 letters beginning with T for a hat. Tile is the old British slang. Where did you get that hat? Where did you get that tile? Is an old musical song, apparently. So if we put T in tile, we've got title. Box for this? Right, I was thinking about Word, where you might put a text box in to put the title in. That's not what this is about. This is about a boxer might box for a World Championship title. So that's what's going on there. And my apologies for thinking on the wrong lines immediately. We'll have a look at 21 down while I take a sip of water. Boat club on French water. Well, how's your French? Well, I've stated a few times that Britons are expected to know quite a few French 101 words in the same way that Americans are often expected to know a few Spanish 101 words because of the proximity of certain neighbours who speak other languages. But here it helps to know both the French for water, which is mentioned in the clue, and the French for boat. It's not mentioned in the clue that we do need the French for boat, but we do, because that is bateau. And although water in French can be eau and club can be bat, it's not really going to make sense unless you know that bateau can be a word for a boat. Again, a little bit of general knowledge there, maybe not quite of the obscurity of skein. And we'll go on to 28 across. We've got a lot of letters before even first approaching this. Conservationists united amid pretty scornful insults. Well, I think this is quite deep vocabulary knowledge this time rather than general knowledge. Conservationists in British crosswords are often the National Trust, the NT. United can be abbreviated to the letter U. So if we were to put NTU in this, we're now looking at the other end of the clue for the definition, insults, or maybe scornful insults. Well, I do know a word that fits, but it's a very unusual and oldie English word, and I know that it appears in Shakespeare to some extent, and probably hasn't been used all that much since then. This is the word contumely, and it's... Excuse me a second, I'm so sorry. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Apparently, I'm under time pressure now because I have to vacate the hotel room. There we go. Right, contumely was used by Shakespeare to mean insults, and that gives us the word comely around NTU. Comely can mean pretty. Again, it's not exactly modern, but there we go. That is the answer, and yeah, quite detailed vocabulary knowledge. Right, 25 down. Like a frittata for one man on vacation. Goodness me, that is not what I was expecting. I was expecting the answer to be ugly. And I don't think it is. I think it's eggy. Is that like a frittata? I'm not 100% sure about a frittata. But for one can be e.g., for example, and then guy being vacated could be a man. Goodness me, that was eggy. Right, let's go on to 5 down. Merchant to supply wine and cheese. Beautifully phrased clue, if this is doing what I think. The first 2 words in that clue are 10 letters long. And if you treat them supply with suppleness, it's an anagram of merchant to, meaning wine and cheese. Montrachet, that's fantastic. Wow, I mean, again, a bit of general knowledge there. I am aware that Montrachet is both a wine and a cheese from a region of France, obviously called Montrachet, but I wouldn't have been able to tell you that I knew an area of France that had both of those before this. Very cleverly, beautifully worded clue, 5 down there. Love it, love it. Even though I've seen that supply equals supply a few times, it's so brilliantly done sometimes, and that's the best example I've seen in a lot. Right, 4 across. How we see strike involving one swaggering. Well, I said there were a lot of words to do with swaggering beginning with B, and I think this is now bombastic. But I don't know why. How we see strike involving one. Is that bombastic? It feels very likely, but I don't know how we see. Bostic? No, I don't really get that. Okay, let's try 20 across. Cruel old woman, fast caging animal. Maleficent, not just a Disney villain, but also a word meaning cruel. Ma could be old woman. Yes, Lent can be fast because the time of Lent is a fast. No, it's not maleficent. It's malevolent because Feis isn't an animal. Vole is an animal. Oh, Disney has got me off the much more normal word onto a harder one there. 17 down. You might say mixed pesto goes into marinade. Well, the 225 and the letters we've got, and you might say, are suggesting so to speak to me. How would that work? An anagram of pesto. And what's that going into? Soak. Or to marinate something is to soak it in your fragrant liquid, I'm sure. 18 down. Let's try this. Indirect confrontation using digital resources. Well, 3, 2, 3 with hyphens suggests something to something, especially indirect confrontation. But man-to-man won't fit. If we're repeating the first and third bits of this, then it's TO something, toe-to-toe. That is indirect confrontation. If you're fighting, we're back to boxing. If you're fighting someone toe-to-toe, you're right next to them. And it's using digital resources because toes are digits, which is the older meaning of digits, obviously. Right, 29 across. Earl to order Kindle download, say. Well, E hyphen and then ending with a K does make this look like e-book. And I think that's exactly what it is. Earl can be abbreviated to E, to order can be to book something, and a Kindle download, say, is obviously a potential ebook. So we'll go on to 23. Spot is potentially looker's problem. Is it an anagram of spot is? Potentially can be used like that. So no, it's not. We're looking for a problem for the eye, I think, a looker's problem. Oh no, I thought of otitis, but that's an ear. That's a hearer's problem. I don't know what this is. Is it an anagram of spot is? Stopis? Let's try 24 down. Discharge of colossal volume. Well, Simon will tell you that almost every crossword the Times publishes has one hidden word in it, and here it is. So this is a discharge, and it's of the phrase colossal volume, and that is a salvo. Well, this is, oh my goodness. So I'm left with, if this is an anagram of spot is, I've got P, O, and I to fit into the unchecked letters here. And diseases or illnesses can end in isis or osis. Could this be ptosis, a word of which I've never heard? I think it could. I don't see any other way of creating the wordplay in this clue. So I'm afraid, doctors amongst you, please tell me what ptosis is, because I don't know. But I think it's the answer. 16 across. Impudence, ignoring king's singer. Well, impudence, there's a phrase which, as well as being sort of gall and sass, it can be brass. That can be cheek. The brass neck of it, the absolute brass. And if that ignores R for king, Rex, then you're left with not bass, but bass, which is a singer in that pronunciation. Okay, 7 down. Make muddled, that's probably the definition. Old boy melt, cuddling pet. Obfuscate? That's the word I can think of meaning make muddled that begins with ob, which can be an abbreviation for old boy. Yes, fuse for melt. If you fuse or melt something together, it's the same thing. And that is cuddling or containing the word cat, which is obviously a potential pet. So it is obfuscate. This is now not bombastic. I don't know what it is. Let's try 10 across with the F in it. Tactless remark, right to be disregarded by boss. If you make a gaffe, it's because you've said a tactless remark. A gaffer is a boss, and if he loses that right, disregards it, we're down to gaff. Sometimes people are a bit surprised that gaff, the slang for an apartment, is G-A-F-F without the E, but gaff, the mistake, is always G-A-F-F with the E. Right, train spotters for demos at 12 across. This is very cleverly worded again. Train spotters obviously makes you think about people on platforms with notebooks taking down numbers of trains. Forget that. Split up the words. We have to train the letters of spotters to give us a word meaning demos. And that's protests. Very well worded again. Let's try 9 down. Drunken son in mother's hosiery. Well, tights is what we call pantyhose in this country, and drunken can be tight, son can be S, and I guess any woman's hosiery could be tights. So that'll work. And we could try 8 down. Bathes in hot water in bawdy house. Well, I think this is stews, which is an old word for a brothel, as is bawdy house. So again, we're looking at some of the recherche bits of the dictionary, but if you bathe something in hot water, you stew it. And if that can also be a bawdy house or brothel, that's the answer. And that's going to make 4 across none of the words I've suggested so far, but bumptious, which is kind of swaggering or very assuming, entitled, we would say these days. how we see strike involving bump to us. That's how we see strike. That's brilliant. So a bump to us is how we see a strike, and that involves I for one and gives us bumptious. So I'm relying on ptosis being right. I'm going to submit this as my answer, and we'll see if it's correct. And it is. And I didn't know ptosis. What I'm actually going to do, you can't see this now. Oh no, I can't. I don't actually have. Sorry, I don't have chambers on this laptop. So I'm looking up ptosis. And apparently it's also known as blepharoptosis and is a drooping or falling of the upper eyelid. Goodness me. Well, I didn't know that. There we go. It is a looker's problem, as it were. And there we go. That's the answer. Now, we would normally do a quick cryptic after this, but because I'm being thrown out of the hotel room, I'm afraid I'm not going to do that. So apologies. I'm going to wrap this video up now and say that's the masterclass for today. And thank you very much for watching. I'm glad we were able to bring it to you at all. And hope to see you again soon on the channel. There will, of course, be Sudoku videos later today, etc. Thanks for watching and bye for now.